Hello readers. Well, I'm now going to repeat the talk I gave on St Patrick's Day for the virtual conference Belper Golden Rainbows. PC Fred Bray very kindly invited me to give a talk with an Irish theme. Now my experience with Irish boys is somewhat limited, but one fondly well-remembered dramatic adventure from teenage years leapt to mind straight away. So, this is a true story. It's all about my mid-Atlantic confrontation with the Master-at-Arms on the SS Empress of England in 1965. Some of you may know that I first emigrated to the USA, arriving on November the 21st, 1963. That was one day before the assassination of President Kennedy. Well, after several jobs, I'd saved up enough money to return to the UK for a holiday on April the 15th, 1965. I was 19 then. In those days, it was much cheaper to sail than to fly. Accordingly, I chose an interesting route via the rail journey from Detroit into Canada. Detroit, of course, just over the river from Canada. Eventually embarking on the SS Empress of England in Montreal. And she sailed up the St Lawrence Seaway bound for Liverpool. It was an 8-day voyage for half the price of an 8-hour flight. Okay. There were 3 classes. There was first class, cabin class and tourist class, previously known as steerage. No prizes for guessing where I was. Yes, I was deep in the bowels of that vessel, sharing my windowless cabin with 2 men and 1 boy. We introduced ourselves, as you do, and Jock was a grumpy Scotsman, a few words, all of which were incomprehensible, couldn't tell a word he said. But Hubert was much more articulate and opinionated as well. He was an Englishman of the old school, the sort of man who would sign himself writing an angry letter, "Disgusted of Tunbridge Wells." Now, that leaves me with one other, and this other must take centre stage in this little drama. Michael. Michael was a beautiful Irish youth of about 17. He ignited in me a profound lust, yes. I could hardly keep my hands off his delicious, tantalising contours, concealed in tempting tight jeans. Oh. So with protruding, leering eyes, like chapel hat pegs, you know how it goes, those eyes met smiling Irish eyes. Oh, he was so cute, he really was. I can see him now. Little turned up nose, freckled face, sweet little button nose, amid a sprinkling of freckles under a mop of light sandy hair. And in a soft southern accent he said, "Hello," and I responded with, "Hello." Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking the aforementioned Master-at-Arms, a chief petty officer in charge of discipline and law enforcement, tackled me because of my lascivious conduct, found wanting in a weak moment on the high seas. Well, I don't blame you, that's exactly what I would have thought. However, you know, this story is a little bit more complicated than that. Being of similar age, we teenagers became chums, if not exactly bum chums. Exploring the ship on that first day, Michael, oh, he was all excited. He was full of it. He revealed to me that he'd already met a girl who was gorgeous, according to him, and he suspected that the girl was willing. Yes, he had hopes of making a score. He had high hopes. Well, in that moment of confidentiality, I craftily manoeuvred him into a nook or a cranny. There are plenty of those on a big ship. Concealed and close together, I encouraged him to enlarge on these hopes he had, and contrived, as an ever closer union, as he prattled on about his pretty girl. So anyway, now this is a point. It's often dangerous for a lad who's gay. A moment when the other person suspects my motives. Well, he made it clear at that point. He said he was not queer, even if I was. And on this matter he was firm. Notwithstanding, I detected a sympathetic undercurrent in his tone, and a willingness to understand. You know what? I've always found the Irish to be a tolerant and gentle race. Michael had never met a queer before, and he listened with interest to my brief biography, a sad story of homosexuality coupled with a life of frustration, much wanting and not getting. Anyway, I laid it on thick, and I raved on about his beautiful body and cute turned-up nose. The fascinating freckles received a mention, and I said to him, look, just a cuddle and a kiss. Oh, I would be so grateful, you know. And you know what? It worked. I was surprised. Anyway, before he changed his mind, I grabbed him and snogged like I'd never snogged before. Oh, it was something, that was. Yeah. Well, anyway, that was that. A beautiful moment, but brief, very brief. The first night, Michael was not in his cabin. Yeah, that was on the first day. He wasn't in his cabin. Oh no, dear, I was laying there. I felt a great sadness, sad emptiness, sleeplessly staring up at that bed, which didn't have Michael in it, that bunk bed. And I knew that somewhere on that ship he was in the arms of another. Oh dear, it was, I couldn't sleep. It was very sad. I was lost. I was in love. Michael's absence attracted considerable comment from Hubert, who expressed himself with acid disapproval. "He's got a bed? Huh? He should be in it. Tomcatting about, no doubt. Disgraceful." "I can see," he turned to me and he said, "I can see that you know how to behave, Narvel," he said. "Good lad." He patted me on the head and said, "Don't be led astray." Well, to my chagrin, Michael never returned to our cabin at all. Well, that said, I did see him every day because we shared the same table at meal times. And in that it was safe, of course. It was a public space, so no chance of wandering hands under the table or anything like that. So we got on quite well, and but when we walked around the ship again, every day we walked, this is what people do, he steered me away from those nooks and crannies. "Oh, no," he said, "no, naughty Narvel," he says, "no more cuddles for you, that's the end of it." So, on the second day, in the public lounge, we noticed two lads who caught our eye with a friendly smile. You know, they were still there in the same place on the third day. On the fourth day, same place, same friendly smile. Are they queer? Asked Michael. I've no idea, I said. Let's go and find out. So anyway, went over to them and they, oh hello, sit down, you see. It was a trite conversation, pleasant small talk, you know, at no point did they reveal their names, and I thought that was a bit odd, and I wondered. Anyway, they were English, they were posh, well educated, well spoken, well mannered. Probably public school boys. The conversation suddenly became more interesting when one of them made a dramatic revelation. He said, actually, he said, we have no tickets. Took a few moments to digest this. Tickets for the football match? No, he meant that they got no tickets on the ship. Oh, well, it took a few moments to digest, and into that stunned silence, the more dominant personality explained the situation in more detail. You see, we have a problem here. We're hungry, having nothing to eat. Well, only nuts and crisps and that sort of thing, which is available on all the tables. That's free, of course. And each afternoon, he said, we drink tea and those tiny dainty sandwiches, but it really isn't enough at all. Then the other one spoke for the first time. He said, he was a bit younger, I think. He said, we're starving, he said the other stowaway. That's what they were, stowaways. Anyway, they spent their nights hanging around the public rooms and bars. Because they had nowhere to sleep, you see. So the staff, well, the people on ships, as you know, stay up very late and sometimes into the small hours. So Stowaway 1 was concerned that he might be discovered because he wore the same clothes all the time. I understood that. Then came requests. Stowaway 1, he leaned closer to me and he said, I say, he said, do you... I said, yes, what is it? He said, spit it out. He said, do you have a shirt I can borrow? And the second stowaway chipped in and he said, I say, can you smuggle some food for us from your meals? We'd be awfully grateful, he said. Well, Michael, with his generous, kind nature, eagerly agreed, thought that we should get some food for these two. Well, he was generous. He'd been generous with me briefly. But anyway, moving on. I was more cautious. I vaguely had a feeling that this might not end well. But anyway, at dinner that evening, I concealed about my person 2 cobs, an apple and a pear. It was agreed that we would meet at the cinema afterwards. That was clever because it's very dark, you know, in the cinema, and after afternoon tea, after they had the dainty sandwiches, where we could safely feed our friends in the dark, on the back row, of course. Wisely, Michael positioned himself, took very much care, positioned himself next to Stowaway 1, and I was sat put next to at the far end next to the other stowaway, who eagerly munched through my offerings. Well, I passed over a small soft parcel to Stowaway 1, and it contained an old black shirt I'd had from my Guzzly Grandad days. He bought it me back in 1957. Black shirt with rock and roll emblazoned on it, and in bright orange it said there was impressions of teenage boys playing guitars, so it was very much of the rock and roll period. The film, must tell you about the film. The film was enjoyed by all. It was Margaret Rutherford in Miss Marple's Murder Most Foul. Brimming with gentle charm, and it was a perfect pleasure. So I have to tell you, see, strong emotion, because I've been in America for 18 months, and that's a long time when you're 19. 18 months, and I was very homesick, and I just longed for all things English, and it was all in that film. It was lovely. Anyway, our quirky quartet, as I think we were, all good companions now, you see, we agreed to meet up in the usual place after dinner. But, disaster descended. It put an abrupt end to our relationship, our friendship. Further fraternisation was not possible with these two. I was in my cabin, I was about to leave for the evening meal, when an officious and frosty chief petty officer burst in. Harshly he demanded my passport and the ship's ticket, proof of payment for the passage. That was required. So anyway, I was fumbling around in my rucksack. Oh dear, oh dear. Incidentally, that was the same rucksack that probably was bought in 1957, another gift from Gusley Grandad. Anyway, fiddling around, and then he made a chilling statement to another officer who I hadn't seen, but there was another man hovering around just outside the door, and he shouted, I'll never forget, Master at Arms! Master at Arms! Please come and guard this person. And then there was a devastating charge. He said, You are guilty. You've been assisting stowaways. Don't move. And with this parting shot, he stormed off, leaving me fixated in the fierce scowl of the Master-at-Arms. I sat on my bed in icy silence until this chief petty officer returned with my documents. Ominously, he said, yes, he said, well, he said, this is not an end. We'll be looking into this matter further. For the time being, you may go. So there we are. Needless to say, with a dry mouth, I was in shock and I had little appetite. Even more shocking, when I got back to the table, hoping to see Michael, my beautiful young Irish boy, he was gone. Gone. I dined alone. And you know, I never saw him again. Never saw him again. I never saw the stowaways again either. On the last day, my shirt, beautifully ironed and neatly presented, just arrived on my bed, all nicely, cellophane jacket, that sort of thing. I don't know who brought it, but anyway, we did arrive in Liverpool on schedule, without arrest or hindrance, because that had been threatened. I was free to embark. Well, epilogue. I've often wondered why Michael disappeared. Was he involved with the posh boys? His girlfriend never seen. Did she exist? We'll probably never know.